The slap echoed through the empty parking garage like a gunshot. I can still feel it, the way my cheek exploded with heat, the way my knees buckled beneath me, the way the concrete scraped my palms as I fell. But what I remember most vividly, what haunts me even now, is the voice that cut through the silence afterward. Low. Controlled. Lethal. Touch her again, he said, stepping out of the shadows like death itself had decided to take human form, and I will personally ensure you regret every breath you take for the rest of your very short life. My husband, Viktor Blackwell, the man I had vowed to love and cherish until death do us part, froze with his hand still raised. I had never seen fear in his eyes before. Not once in 5 years of marriage. He was the one who inspired fear, who wielded it like a weapon against everyone around him. Against me, most of all. But in that moment, as this stranger emerged from the darkness wearing a tailored black suit and an expression that promised violence, Viktor's face went white as bone. I didn't know his name yet, the man who would change everything. I didn't know that he controlled half the city's underground empire, that people whispered his name in terror and reverence, that he had killed men for far less than what Viktor had just done. All I knew was that for the first time in 5 years, someone was standing between me and the fists that had become my constant companions. My name is Seraphina Calloway Blackwell, though I've long since stopped recognizing myself by that married name. And this is the story of how a mafia boss saved me from my husband, and how I discovered that sometimes, the most dangerous men are also the most capable of unexpected tenderness. Before I continue, I want you to do something for me. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching this from. I'm curious to know how far this story has traveled. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this unfolds. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. To the night I met Viktor Blackwell and made the worst decision of my entire life. I was 23 years old, fresh out of university with a degree in art history and dreams as wide as the horizon. My mother, Eleonora, had raised me alone after my father disappeared when I was 7. She worked 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, and I swore I would make something of myself to repay her sacrifice. Then the bills started piling up. Medical bills, specifically. My mother was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer that required treatments our insurance wouldn't cover. Experimental therapies. Specialists who charged more per consultation than we made in a month. I was drowning in debt when I met Viktor at a charity gala I had no business attending. My best friend, Marguerite, had gotten me a ticket through her connections in the art world. Come, she had insisted. Network. Make contacts. This could change your life. She was right. It did change my life. Just not in the way either of us expected. Viktor Blackwell was everything I thought I wanted. Handsome in that classic, old-money way, sharp jawline, steel gray eyes, perfectly styled dark hair threaded with distinguished silver at the temples despite being only 35. He owned a chain of luxury hotels across the country, drove cars that cost more than my mother's house, and wore confidence like a second skin. He pursued me relentlessly. Flowers delivered to my tiny apartment every day for 2 weeks. Dinner at restaurants where a single appetizer cost what I spent on groceries for a month. He listened when I talked about my mother, about my dreams, about my fears. He seemed to genuinely care. "Let me help you," he said one night, after I had finally broken down and confessed the depth of my financial desperation. "Your mother's treatments, I'll cover them. All of them." I should have known that nothing comes without a price. The proposal came 3 months later. A 10-carat diamond ring, a sunset over the ocean, and a question that felt less like romance and more like a business transaction, though I was too blinded by gratitude and relief to see it then. "Marry me, Seraphina," Viktor said. "Let me take care of you. Let me take care of your mother. You'll never have to worry about money again." My mother's cancer went into remission 2 months after our wedding. I thought it was a sign, proof that I had made the right choice. The first time Viktor hit me was on our 6-month anniversary. I had burned the dinner. Something so small, so insignificant. I had been distracted, worrying about my mother's upcoming checkup, and I had left the roast in the oven too long. The smoke alarm went off, and Viktor came storming into the kitchen with a fury I had never witnessed before. "Useless," he spat. "I pulled you out of poverty, gave you everything, and you can't even manage a simple meal?" The backhand came without warning. I hit the floor hard enough to see stars. "Clean this up," he said, straightening his cuffs as if nothing had happened. "And don't you dare cry. I hate weakness." I told myself it was a one-time thing. An aberration. Stress from work. He apologized the next morning with roses and a diamond bracelet, and I accepted his explanation because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. What would happen to my mother if I left? Viktor had made it clear, subtly, always subtly, that his generosity was contingent on my compliance. On my presence. On my silence. So I stayed. And the hits kept coming. By our 2nd anniversary, I had learned to apply concealer like a professional makeup artist. I knew exactly which colors neutralized which bruises, green for red marks, yellow for purple ones, a heavy layer of full coverage foundation over everything. I wore long sleeves in summer. I avoided my mother as much as possible, terrified she would see through my facade. Marguerite tried to intervene once. She showed up at our penthouse unannounced and caught me icing a swollen lip. "Sarah," she whispered, horror in her eyes. "You have to leave him." "I can't," I said, and the words tasted like ash. "He'll destroy me. He'll destroy my mother." "Maggie, you don't understand, he knows people. Powerful people. If I try to run, he'll find me." She begged me to reconsider. I begged her to forget what she had seen. A week later, Marguerite was in a car accident. She survived, but barely. Both legs shattered, months of physical therapy ahead. The police ruled it an accident, icy roads, a drunk driver who was never caught. But I knew. I knew because Viktor smiled when he told me the news, that cold serpent smile that made my blood freeze. "Such a shame about your friend," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "I hope this teaches you the importance of privacy, Seraphina. What happens in our home stays in our home." After that, I stopped fighting. I stopped hoping. I became a ghost in my own life, drifting through days that blurred together in an endless gray haze. I attended charity events on Viktor's arm, smiled for photographs, played the dutiful wife while my soul slowly died inside me. 5 years. That's how long I endured. 5 years of bruises and broken bones and shattered dreams. 5 years of silence and shame and suffocating despair. Until that night in the parking garage. Until him. I didn't know, as I knelt on that cold concrete with blood dripping from my split lip, that Damiano Corsetti had been watching me for months. I didn't know that he had seen me at event after event, always with that hollow look in my eyes, always wearing long sleeves, always flinching when Viktor touched me. I didn't know that he had been waiting, patiently, methodically, for the right moment to intervene. "Who the hell are you?" Viktor demanded, but his voice cracked on the last word. Damiano Corsetti didn't answer. He simply walked toward us with the unhurried grace of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. Two men materialized behind him, massive, silent, radiating threat. "I believe," Damiano said softly, "that I just told you what would happen if you touched her again." Viktor's hand dropped to his side. "This is none of your business. She's my wife. She's bleeding. That's between us." Damiano tilted his head, studying Viktor like one might study an insect before crushing it beneath their heel. "Do you know who I am, Senior Blackwell?" I watched Viktor's face cycle through emotions, confusion, then recognition, then pure, unadulterated terror. "Corsetti," he breathed. You're Damiano Corsetti." "Ah. So you're not entirely stupid. Just morally bankrupt." Damiano reached down and offered me his hand. "Signora, are you able to stand?" I stared at that hand, strong, calloused, adorned with a single silver ring on the pinky finger, and something inside me shifted. A tiny spark of hope, fragile as glass, flickering to life in the darkness that had become my existence. I took his hand. And nothing was ever the same again. Damiano Corsetti's hand was warm against my frozen fingers. He lifted me to my feet with surprising gentleness, steadying me when I swayed. Up close, I could see that his eyes were not quite black, as I had first thought, but a deep, burnished brown with flecks of gold near the pupils. There was something ancient in those eyes. Something that had seen too much suffering to be surprised by any of it. "Can you walk?" he asked quietly. I nodded, though I wasn't entirely sure it was true. My knees felt like water. My head was spinning from Viktor's latest blow. "Corsetti." Viktor's voice had shifted from terror to something approaching negotiation. The businessman in him, always calculating, always looking for an angle. "Listen, I don't know what you think you saw, but this is a private matter. Seraphina is clumsy, she fell." "She fell," Damiano repeated flatly. "Onto your hand." Repeatedly. "I don't appreciate your tone." Damiano smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever witnessed, worse than Viktor's rages, worse than the violence I had grown to expect. Because there was nothing human in that smile. Nothing warm or merciful. "And I don't appreciate watching men beat their wives in parking garages," he said. "So it seems we are at an impasse." Viktor puffed up his chest, summoning the bravado that had always worked on lesser men. "Do you have any idea who I am? Do you know how many lawyers I have on retainer? If you think you can threaten me." "I'm not threatening you." Damiano's smile widened. "I'm making you a promise. And I always keep my promises." He turned back to me, dismissing Viktor as if he were nothing more than an annoyance. "Signora Blackwell, I would like to offer you a ride home. Or—" He paused, studying my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. "Somewhere else, if you prefer." Somewhere else. 3 little words that represented everything I had dreamed of for 5 years. Freedom. Escape. A life without fear. But I had learned, in the hardest way possible, that hope was dangerous. That reaching for something better only resulted in worse punishment when you were inevitably dragged back. I should go with my husband," I heard myself say. Viktor's face flooded with triumph. "There. You see? She wants to come home. Don't you, darling?" The endearment made my stomach turn. Damiano ignored him completely, his eyes never leaving mine. "Is that what you want, Signora? Truly?" Nobody had asked me what I wanted in years. Viktor told me what I wanted. What I should wear, what I should eat, how I should speak, when I should smile. I had forgotten that I was allowed to have preferences. That my desires mattered. My voice faltered. You don't have to answer now, Damiano said gently. But I want you to know, if you ever need help, you can find me. Enzo. One of the massive men stepped forward, producing a black business card from his pocket. He handed it to me with a slight nod. The card was simple, heavy cardstock, elegant font. Just a phone number. No name, no address. That line is answered 24 hours a day, Damiano said. If you call, someone will come for you. No questions asked. This is absurd, Viktor snapped, grabbing my arm. His fingers dug into the same bruises he had left yesterday. I couldn't suppress my wince. Seraphina, we're leaving. Now. Damiano's hand shot out and wrapped around Viktor's wrist. Even from where I stood, I could see the way Viktor's bones compressed under that grip. He made a strangled sound of pain. I said, Damiano murmured, touch her again and regret it. Are you having trouble with your hearing, Senior Blackwell? Perhaps I should speak more clearly. Let go of me. Consider this your only warning. Damiano released him, and Viktor stumbled backward, cradling his wrist. The next time I see marks on her skin, I will assume you have chosen to ignore my advice. And I will respond accordingly. He straightened his jacket, gave me one last long look, and walked away. His men followed in silence, their footsteps echoing through the empty garage. Viktor didn't speak the entire drive home. I sat in the passenger seat of his Bentley, the black card hidden in my bra, pressed against my racing heart. I didn't dare look at it. I didn't dare hope. But for the first time in 5 years, I had something I had nearly forgotten existed. An option. Viktor's silence lasted until we reached the penthouse. The moment the elevator doors closed behind us, he grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the wall. Who is he? He demanded. How do you know Damiano Corsetti? I couldn't breathe. His hand was crushing my windpipe, and spots were dancing at the edges of my vision. I've never seen him before. Liar. He released me suddenly, and I crumpled to the floor, gasping. You've been whoring yourself out behind my back. That's it, isn't it? That's how you know a mafia boss. Mafia boss. The words penetrated the fog of pain and terror. Of course. I had heard the name Corsetti whispered at parties, seen the way people stepped aside when certain men entered rooms. The criminal underworld of the city was an open secret among the elite, acknowledged but never discussed directly. And Damiano Corsetti was its king. I don't know him, I managed to choke out. I swear. Viktor, please. Shut up. He paced the length of the living room, running his hands through his perfect hair. Corsetti. Of all people. Do you have any idea what kind of man he is? What he does to people who cross him? I shook my head, still struggling to catch my breath. He's a monster. Viktor laughed humorlessly. A killer. He's left bodies all over this city. And now he's inserting himself into my business? My marriage? He stopped pacing and turned to look at me with an expression I had never seen before. Calculation. Suspicion. And something that looked disturbingly like excitement. Unless. He tapped his chin thoughtfully. Unless this is an opportunity. I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. Get up, he ordered. Clean yourself up. We have the Hartwell Foundation Gala in 3 days, and I need you presentable. I dragged myself to my feet, my throat aching, my head pounding. And Seraphina? Viktor grabbed my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. If I find out you've been lying to me, if there's anything going on between you and Corsetti, I will kill you. Do you understand? I'll make it look like an accident, just like I did with your friend Marguerite. And then I'll go after your mother. He released me with a shove that sent me stumbling. Now get out of my sight. I fled to my bathroom, my sanctuary, the only room in the penthouse with a lock Viktor hadn't removed, and collapsed against the door. My hands were shaking as I retrieved the black card from my bra. A phone number. Just a phone number. Could I really call it? Could I really trust a mafia boss to help me when the police had failed, when lawyers had laughed in my face, when every system designed to protect people like me had crumbled under the weight of Viktor's money and influence? I didn't know. I couldn't know. But I kept the card anyway. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and paranoia. Viktor watched me constantly, searching for evidence of the affair he was convinced I was having. I performed my role flawlessly, the obedient wife, the grateful beneficiary of his generosity. And underneath it all, the card burned like a brand against my skin. I researched Damiano Corsetti late at night, when Viktor was asleep and I could use my phone without fear of discovery. The information available was sparse but chilling. He was the head of the Corsetti family, one of the oldest criminal organizations in the country. His father had built an empire on gambling and smuggling. Damiano had expanded it into construction, real estate, and legitimate businesses that served as fronts for more nefarious activities. He was 38 years old. Never married. Rumored to be ruthless, brilliant, and utterly without mercy when it came to his enemies. So why had he helped me? The question plagued me. Men like Damiano Corsetti didn't intervene in domestic disputes out of the goodness of their hearts. They didn't hand out phone numbers to random women in parking garages. There had to be an angle, a motive, something I was missing. Unless there wasn't. Unless, sometimes, even monsters could recognize the suffering of someone drowning in a different kind of darkness. The Hartwell Foundation Gala arrived with typical fanfare, a glittering event at a historic hotel, attended by the wealthiest and most influential people in the city. I wore a sapphire gown that Viktor had chosen for me, my makeup flawlessly concealing the fading bruises on my neck. Viktor kept his hand on the small of my back all night, a constant reminder of his ownership. And then, across the crowded ballroom, I saw him. Damiano Corsetti stood near the bar, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his dark eyes already fixed on me. He was surrounded by men in expensive suits, associates, I assumed, or perhaps the endless parade of people seeking favors from the most powerful criminal in the city. But he wasn't looking at any of them. He was looking at me. Our eyes met, and I felt something jolt through my entire body. Not fear, though perhaps it should have been. Something else. Something electric and terrifying and impossibly alive. He raised his glass slightly, the barest acknowledgement. Viktor felt me tense. He followed my gaze, and I heard his sharp intake of breath. Corsetti, he muttered. What's he doing here? I don't know. Stay away from him. Viktor's fingers dug into my back. If he approaches you, walk away. Do you understand? I nodded, but even as I did, Damiano Corsetti began moving through the crowd, heading directly toward us. Here's a question for you. If you were in Seraphina's position, trapped, terrified, with no good options, would you trust the outstretched hand of a dangerous stranger? Think about it. Drop your answer in the comments below, and let's see what you would do. Viktor's hand tightened on my waist as Damiano approached. I could feel my husband's fear radiating off him in waves, and for one petty, glorious moment, I savored it. Signora Blackwell. Damiano stopped before us, ignoring Viktor entirely. You look well. I trust your health has improved since our last encounter? Viktor stepped forward, positioning himself between us. Corsetti. I didn't expect to see you at a charity event. Did you not? Damiano's voice was mild, but his eyes remained on me. I support many charitable causes, Senior Blackwell. The well-being of those who cannot protect themselves is of particular interest to me. The subtext was unmistakable. Viktor's jaw tightened. My wife and I were just leaving. Were you? Damiano finally deigned to look at him. What a pity. I was hoping to discuss a business proposition with you. But if you're otherwise engaged. He let the sentence hang. Viktor's greed warred visibly with his fear. What kind of business proposition? Damiano smiled that cold, predatory smile. Walk with me. We'll discuss the details in private. Viktor hesitated, glancing at me. Seraphina. Your wife will be perfectly safe, Damiano said smoothly. My associate Enzo will ensure no one bothers her in your absence. Before Viktor could protest, the massive man from the parking garage materialized at my side. Viktor looked between us, calculating, and finally nodded curtly. 5 minutes, he said. He walked away with Damiano, and I was left alone with a Mafia enforcer in the middle of a glittering ballroom. Signora, Enzo said quietly. The boss wanted me to give you a message. I looked up at him. His face was impassive, revealing nothing. The offer still stands, he said. Whenever you're ready. The offer still stands. Those words echoed through my mind for the rest of the night, through Viktor's increasingly erratic behavior, through his paranoid questions about what Enzo had said to me, through the bruising grip he kept on my arm during the car ride home. I lied, of course. I told him Enzo had said nothing, that he had simply stood guard as instructed. Viktor didn't believe me, but he couldn't prove otherwise. That night, for the first time since Damiano Corsetti had stepped out of the shadows, Viktor didn't hit me. He didn't even touch me. He was afraid. The realization was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. For years, Viktor had been untouchable, protected by his wealth, his connections, his lawyers, his reputation. He operated in a world where money bought immunity, where powerful men faced no consequences for the destruction they wrought on those beneath them. But Damiano Corsetti existed outside that world. He made his own rules. And Viktor knew it. The business proposition, whatever it was, seemed to consume Viktor's attention over the following weeks. He took phone calls behind closed doors, left for mysterious meetings at odd hours, and returned looking increasingly haggard and stressed. I didn't know what Damiano was planning. I didn't dare ask. But I noticed other things. Small things, at first. The car that always seemed to be parked on our street, no matter what time of day. The delivery man who brought flowers to the penthouse, flowers I hadn't ordered, with a small card that read only "You are not alone." The way Viktor's business associates began distancing themselves, finding excuses to cancel meetings and postpone deals. Damiano Corsetti was circling Viktor like a shark, and Viktor was too arrogant to see how badly he was bleeding. 3 weeks after the gala, I received an unexpected visitor. I was at a cafe in the art district, one of the few places Viktor allowed me to go alone, because it was owned by one of his business partners and therefore monitored. I was sipping tea and pretending to read a book when a woman slid into the seat across from me. She was striking, late 40s, with silver-streaked black hair pulled back in an elegant chignon and eyes that seemed to see straight through to my soul. "Seraphina Blackwell," she said. It wasn't a question. I tensed, preparing to flee. "Who are you?" "My name is Celestina Corsetti." She smiled slightly at my sharp intake of breath. "Yes. I'm Damiano's mother." I didn't know what to say. I sat frozen, clutching my teacup like a lifeline. "Please, don't be alarmed," Celestina said gently. "I'm not here to threaten you. Quite the opposite, in fact." "I don't understand." She studied me for a long moment, her dark eyes, so like her son's, soft with something that looked almost like compassion. "My son has told me about you," she said finally. "He's concerned for your safety." "Why?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why does he care?" "He doesn't know me. I'm nothing to him." Celestina was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing the rim of her own teacup. "May I tell you a story, Seraphina?" I nodded, too bewildered to refuse. "When I was young, younger than you are now, I married a man much like your Viktor. His name was Enzio Corsetti, and he was the head of a powerful family. I was 17 and naive, and I believed I loved him." Her voice was steady, but I could see shadows moving behind her eyes. "Enzio was traditional. He believed a wife was property. Something to be controlled, disciplined, kept in line. For years, I endured what you have endured. The bruises. The fear. The constant, crushing weight of his anger." My throat tightened. "What happened?" "I had a son. Damiano." Celestina smiled, but it was tinged with old pain. "And I realized that I was raising him in a house built on violence. That he was learning, every day, that it was acceptable for a man to treat a woman the way his father treated me." She met my eyes directly. "When Damiano was 12 years old, Enzio beat me so badly that I couldn't walk for a week. And that night, my 12-year-old son stood over his father's bed with a knife, ready to kill him." I gasped softly. "I stopped him, of course. Convinced him there was another way. But that was the moment I knew I had to leave, not just for myself, but for my son's soul." "Did you escape?" "Eventually. With help from people who understood what I was going through." Celestina reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "Damiano has never forgotten what it was like to watch his mother suffer. He has never forgotten the helplessness, the rage, the desperate desire to protect someone he loved from a monster." She squeezed my hand gently. "When he sees you, Seraphina, he sees me. 30 years ago, trapped and alone and convinced there was no way out. He cannot stand by and watch another woman suffer the way I suffered. It's not in his nature." I felt tears pricking at my eyes. "But he's not exactly an angel?" Celestina laughed softly. "No. My son is many things, but innocent is not one of them. He's made choices I don't approve of. Taken paths I wish he had avoided. But underneath all of it, he is still the boy who stood over his father's bed with a knife because he couldn't bear to see his mother hurt anymore." She released my hand and rose gracefully to her feet. "The offer is real, Seraphina. When you're ready to leave, truly ready, call the number. Damiano will keep you safe. I give you my word as a mother who knows exactly what you're going through." She placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Don't wait too long, Kara. Men like your husband don't change. They only grow more dangerous with time. And then she was gone, slipping out of the cafe as silently as she had arrived. I sat there for a long time, staring at my cold tea, trying to process what I had just learned. Damiano Corsetti wasn't pursuing me out of some nefarious agenda. He wasn't trying to use me as leverage against Viktor or extract some twisted favor. He was trying to save me because he had once been a child watching his mother bleed. Something shifted inside me that afternoon. A crack in the walls I had built around my heart, letting in the faintest ray of light. But I still wasn't ready. Not yet. 2 more weeks passed. Viktor's behavior grew increasingly erratic as whatever scheme Damiano was executing tightened around him. Business deals fell through. Investors withdrew funding. His precious hotels began hemorrhaging money as contracts mysteriously dissolved and partnerships imploded. And Viktor, predictably, took out his frustrations on me. The night everything changed, he came home drunk and furious. I heard him slam through the penthouse door from where I was hiding in the library, and I knew immediately that this would be bad. Seraphina. His voice echoed through the apartment like a death knell. I considered running. I considered calling the number. But Viktor was too fast, bursting into the library before I could move. This is your fault, he snarled, stalking toward me. All of it. Ever since that night in the parking garage, everything has fallen apart. Viktor, please. Shut up. He grabbed me by the hair and yanked me to my feet. Corsetti is destroying me. Systematically. Methodically. And it's because of you. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. The first blow caught me in the stomach. I doubled over, gasping. He warned me, Viktor continued, pacing around me like a predator. Touch her again and regret it. Touch her again and regret it. As if I don't have the right to discipline my own wife. Another blow. This time to my ribs. I felt something crack. Well, I've decided. Viktor grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. His eyes were wild, unhinged in a way I had never seen before. If Corsetti wants you so badly, he can have you. After I'm done. He threw me to the floor and began unbuckling his belt. Viktor, please. I'm going to give you something to remember me by, Seraphina. Something that will make even your Mafia savior think twice about wanting you. In that moment, as Viktor loomed over me with murder in his eyes, I made a choice. I had carried the card in my bra every day since that night in the parking garage. It was crumpled now, worn soft from being pressed against my skin. But the number was still legible. My phone was in my pocket. Viktor had stopped checking for it months ago, convinced he had broken me beyond any hope of resistance. He turned away for 1 second, just one, to pour himself another drink. And I dialed. The phone rang once. Twice. This is Corsetti. The voice was calm, controlled. Please, I whispered. Please help me. A pause. Then, the penthouse? Yes. 10 minutes. Stay alive. The line went dead. Viktor turned back to me, drink in hand, belt in the other. Now, he said, where were we? 10 minutes. I had to survive 10 minutes. Viktor crossed the room toward me, and I scrambled backward until my back hit the wall. There was nowhere left to run, nowhere to hide. The penthouse that had been my prison for 5 years had become a killing floor. Viktor, wait. I held up my hands. Please. Let's talk about this. Talk? He laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. We're past talking, Seraphina. We've been past talking for a very long time. He grabbed me by the ankle and dragged me across the floor. I screamed, clawing at the hardwood, but he was too strong. He flipped me onto my back and straddled me, pinning my arms above my head. You know, he said conversationally, I've been too gentle with you. That's been my mistake. I thought fear would be enough to keep you in line. But clearly, you need something more permanent. He raised his fist. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact. But it never came. Instead, I heard the penthouse door explode inward with a deafening crash, followed by the thunder of footsteps and shouting voices. Viktor froze. His weight shifted off me as he scrambled to his feet, and I curled into a ball, trying to make myself as small as possible. What the? And then Damiano Corsetti was there. He moved through the chaos like a force of nature, his men swarming around Viktor while he came directly to me. He knelt at my side, his hands gentle as he helped me sit up. Seraphina. Are you hurt? I nodded, unable to speak. My ribs were screaming, my face was swelling, and I could taste blood in my mouth. His jaw tightened. Something dark and terrible flickered in his eyes as he took in my injuries. Get the doctor, he ordered over his shoulder. Then, to me, you're safe now. He'll never touch you again. Corsetti. Viktor's voice was shrill with panic. This is assault. Breaking and entering. I'll have you arrested. Damiano rose slowly and turned to face my husband. The transformation was remarkable. One moment, he was gentle, concerned, almost tender. The next, he was something else entirely. Something ancient and merciless, carved from stone and shadow. I warned you, he said softly. In the parking garage, I told you exactly what would happen if you touched her again. Viktor struggled against the men holding him. You can't do this. I have rights. You forfeited your rights the moment you raised your hand to her. Damiano took a step closer. Tell me, Senior Blackwell. When you were beating your wife, did you consider her rights? When you were threatening her mother, did you think about justice? Viktor's face went pale. How do you know about? I know everything. Damiano's voice was ice. I know about Marguerite's accident. I know about the insurance policies you've taken out on Seraphina's life. I know about the offshore accounts where you've been hiding money from your business partners. Viktor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You thought you were untouchable, Damiano continued. You thought your money and your lawyers made you invincible. But there are powers in this world that don't bow to wealth, Viktor. Powers that answer to different rules. He leaned in close, and even from where I sat, I could see Viktor trembling. You made a mistake, Damiano whispered. You hurt someone under my protection. And now you're going to pay for it. Please. Save your begging. Damiano straightened and nodded to his men. Take him. We have much to discuss. They dragged Viktor toward the door, and for one surreal moment, our eyes met. He looked nothing like the powerful, terrifying man who had ruled my life for 5 years. He looked small. Broken. Afraid. I felt nothing. Seraphina. Damiano was at my side again, offering his hand. Can you stand? I tried, but my legs wouldn't support me. The adrenaline that had kept me going was fading, leaving nothing but pain and exhaustion in its wake. Without a word, Damiano lifted me into his arms. I should have protested, should have insisted on walking, on maintaining some semblance of dignity. But I was too tired. Too broken. Too relieved. I leaned my head against his chest and closed my eyes. "You came," I murmured. "You actually came." "Of course I came." His voice rumbled through his chest, steady and warm. "I told you, when you call, someone comes." He carried me out of the penthouse, away from the prison that had held me for 5 years, and into a waiting car. Enzo slid into the driver's seat while a woman I didn't recognize, the doctor, I assumed, climbed in beside me. "Where are we going?" I managed to ask. "Somewhere safe," Damiano said. "Somewhere Viktor Blackwell can never reach you." For the first time in 5 years, I believed it might actually be true. I drifted in and out of consciousness as the doctor examined me. 2 cracked ribs, she determined. Multiple contusions. A mild concussion. Nothing life-threatening, but I would need rest and careful monitoring. We arrived at a sprawling estate outside the city, hidden behind high walls and iron gates. The house was elegant but unpretentious, nothing like Viktor's ostentatious penthouse. It felt, I realized with a start, like a home. Damiano carried me inside and up a sweeping staircase to a guest room decorated in soft blues and creams. He laid me on the bed with infinite care, arranging pillows behind my head. "Sleep," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." "Damiano." He paused at the door. "Why?" I asked. "Why are you doing all of this? Your mother told me about your father, about what you witnessed as a child. But this goes beyond that. You've spent months orchestrating, whatever this is. Destroying Viktor's business. Watching over me. Why?" He was silent for a long moment. "When I was 12 years old," he said finally, "I swore that I would never let another woman suffer the way my mother suffered. Not if I had the power to stop it. But you didn't know me. I was a stranger. You were a woman in pain." He turned to look at me, and something in his expression made my heart skip. "And the moment I saw you, Seraphina, I knew I would burn the world to set you free." He left before I could respond, closing the door softly behind him. I lay in the darkness, surrounded by the scent of fresh linens and the distant sound of the city, and for the first time in 5 years, I allowed myself to cry. Not from pain. Not from fear. From relief. I slept for almost 18 hours. When I finally woke, sunlight was streaming through the gauzy curtains, and a woman I didn't recognize was sitting in a chair by the window, reading a book. "Good morning," she said, setting the book aside. "I'm Valentina, one of the household staff. Mr. Corsetti asked me to stay with you in case you needed anything." "Where is he?" "Handling business." Her smile was kind. "He's been checking on you every few hours, though." Very concerned. I tried to sit up and winced as my ribs protested. "Careful." Valentina hurried to my side, helping me adjust the pillows. "The doctor said you need at least a week of rest. No sudden movements." My mother. The thought hit me like a lightning bolt. Viktor threatened my mother. "I need to." "Already taken care of," Valentina assured me. "Mr. Corsetti moved your mother to a private facility under an assumed name. She's safe, well protected, and has no idea anything is wrong. He said you would worry." The relief that flooded through me was almost painful. "He thought of everything," I whispered. "He usually does." I spent the next 3 days recovering, slowly regaining my strength. Damiano visited me each evening, bringing books from his library and sitting with me while I ate. We talked about nothing and everything. My love of art history. His travels around the world. The garden he was secretly terrible at maintaining, despite hiring a full-time gardener. The cat that had adopted him 2 years ago and now ruled the household with an iron paw. He never mentioned Viktor. Never asked about the violence I had endured. He simply treated me like a person, not a victim, not a project, not an obligation. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. On the fourth night, I finally asked the question that had been burning in my mind. What's going to happen to Viktor? Damiano's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. He's been encouraged to sign over all his assets to you, he said carefully. The hotels. The properties. The accounts he tried to hide. Everything. And when he finishes signing? He'll be taking an extended vacation. Somewhere far away, where he can never hurt you again. I understood what he wasn't saying. Will he? I couldn't finish the sentence. Damiano leaned forward, taking my hand in his. That depends on you, Seraphina. If you want justice, real justice, the kind that sends a message, I can arrange it. But if you want to move on, to never think about him again, that can be arranged too. He squeezed my hand gently. This is your choice. Whatever you decide, I will support it. I thought about Viktor. About 5 years of terror. About Marguerite's shattered legs. About the insurance policies and the threats against my mother. I want him to suffer, I said quietly. I want him to feel what I felt. The fear. The helplessness. The constant, crushing weight of another person's cruelty. Damiano nodded slowly. Then it will be done. The legal process, ironically, was the easiest part. With Viktor's signature obtained under circumstances I chose not to ask about, I became one of the wealthiest women in the city overnight. His empire, the hotels, the properties, the investments, all transferred to my name. His lawyers tried to fight it, of course, but they quickly discovered that opposing Damiano Corsetti came with consequences they weren't prepared to face. One by one, they withdrew from the case. I didn't care about the money, not really. It was Viktor's weapon, just like everything else, and holding it felt like grasping a poisonous snake. But Damiano convinced me to see it differently. He took years of your life, he said one evening as we walked through the estate's gardens. He owes you a debt that money can never fully repay. But this is a start. I nodded slowly, understanding the logic even if I couldn't quite embrace it. My mother was the hardest conversation. I visited her at the private facility where Damiano had arranged her care, a beautiful cottage-style recovery center that looked more like a luxury resort than a medical institution. She was doing well, her cancer still in remission, her spirits high. Until she saw the fading bruises on my face. Seraphina. Her voice cracked. What happened to you? I had prepared a story. A lie about a car accident, about clumsy falls, about anything other than the truth. But looking into my mother's eyes, the woman who had sacrificed everything for me, I couldn't do it. I told her everything. She cried. She raged. She blamed herself for encouraging me to marry Viktor, for not seeing the signs, for being too sick to protect me. It's not your fault, I said, holding her hands. None of this is your fault. Viktor fooled everyone. He fooled me. But I should have known. Mom. I squeezed her fingers gently. I'm safe now. That's what matters. I'm safe, and I'm free, and I'm never going back to that life. She studied my face for a long moment. The man who helped you, she said carefully. This Damiano Corsetti. Who is he to you? I hesitated. A friend. Just a friend? I didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. 3 weeks after my escape, I stood in the doorway of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Enzo was at my side, and Damiano stood beside me, a steadying presence in the darkness. Viktor was chained to a chair in the center of the empty space. He looked nothing like the man who had terrorized me for 5 years. His expensive suit was torn and dirty. His perfect hair was matted with sweat. There were bruises on his face, fresh ones, deep purple and angry red. Someone had been asking him questions. Someone had not liked the answers. Seraphina. Viktor's voice was hoarse, broken. Please. You have to help me. These people, they're monsters. Monsters? I stepped closer, and his face twisted with something between hope and fear. Viktor, I want you to listen very carefully. For 5 years, you beat me. You isolated me. You threatened everyone I loved. You broke my bones, crushed my spirit, and made me believe I was worthless. My voice didn't waver. I was surprised to find that my hands were steady. You called yourself a husband, but you were a jailer. You called yourself a provider, but you were a thief, stealing my youth, my joy, my belief in my own worth. I leaned down until I was eye level with him. You are the monster, Viktor. And now, finally, you're going to understand what it feels like to be completely at someone else's mercy. Please. Save it. I straightened up. I don't want your apologies. I don't want your excuses. I just want you to know something before this is over. I smiled. It was not a kind smile. I want you to know that I won. That despite everything you did to break me, I survived. I escaped. And I found people who value me, really value me, in ways you never could. Viktor's eyes darted to Damiano, and understanding dawned in his expression. You and Corsetti? That's none of your concern anymore. I turned my back on him for the last time. Goodbye, Viktor. I hope the rest of your life is exactly as long and painful as you deserve. I walked out of the warehouse without looking back. Enzo escorted me to the waiting car, and Damiano joined me a few minutes later. His knuckles were bleeding. It's done, he said quietly. He'll be on a cargo ship by midnight. There's a mining operation in South America that's always looking for workers. Hard labor. Brutal conditions. No chance of escape. Will he survive? Possibly. Damiano's expression was grim. But he'll never hurt anyone again. And he'll spend every moment of every day understanding exactly how helpless the people he tortured felt. I nodded slowly. Thank you, I said. For everything. Damiano looked at me for a long moment. You don't have to thank me, Seraphina. You never have to thank me for doing what's right. The drive back to the estate was silent, but it was a comfortable silence. The kind that exists between people who understand each other without words. When we arrived, Damiano walked me to my room now, not just a guest room. I had been staying at the estate for almost a month, and somehow, it had begun to feel like home. Damiano. He paused at my door. Will you stay? The words came out before I could stop them. Not like that. I don't want to be alone tonight. He studied my face, searching for something. Whatever he found seemed to satisfy him. Of course. He sat in the chair by my window while I climbed into bed. The moonlight painted silver shadows across his face, softening the hard edges that made him so intimidating. Tell me something, I said quietly. Something true. What do you want to know? Why me? I turned to face him. Your mother said you see her when you look at me. That you can't stand by while someone suffers the way she suffered. But there must be thousands of women in situations like mine. Why did you choose me? Damiano was silent for a long moment. Do you remember the first time we saw each other? He finally asked. Not the parking garage. Before that. I shook my head. It was at a gallery opening, almost a year ago. The Rossetti collection. You were standing in front of a Renaissance painting, a Madonna and Child, and you were crying. I remembered the night, though not seeing him there. I had been crying because the painting reminded me of my mother. Of the life I had dreamed of before Viktor. Of everything I had lost. Viktor was across the room, talking business, ignoring you completely. And you stood there, alone and broken, with tears running down your face, and no one, not a single person in that crowded gallery, stopped to ask if you were okay. His voice was rough with something I couldn't name. I wanted to go to you then. I wanted to ask why you were crying, to offer you a handkerchief, to do something. But I didn't know your situation. I didn't know the danger you were in. So I watched. I learned. I waited. For what? For the right moment to help you. He met my eyes. And for you to be ready to accept that help. I felt tears pricking at my eyes. You waited almost a year for me. I would have waited longer. His voice was barely above a whisper. I would have waited forever, Seraphina. Because from the moment I saw you crying in front of that painting, I knew you were someone worth waiting for. The tears spilled over. This time, I didn't try to stop them. Damiano. Sleep. He stood and crossed to my bed, brushing a gentle hand across my hair. We have all the time in the world now. There's no need to rush anything. He returned to his chair by the window, and I closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I dreamed of something other than fear. I dreamed of light. Healing, I learned, is not a straight line. There are good days and bad days. Moments of triumph and hours of terror. Sometimes I would be fine, better than fine even, and then a sound or a smell would transport me back to the penthouse, back to Viktor's fists, back to the darkness. But I was never alone. Not anymore. Damiano was patient in ways I never expected. He gave me space when I needed it and company when I didn't. He never pushed, never demanded, never made me feel like I owed him anything for saving my life. This is not a transaction, he said one night, when I tried to thank him for the 100th time. You owe me nothing. Whatever you choose to give, your friendship, your trust, your time, is a gift. Not a payment. I fell in love with him slowly, like sinking into a warm bath. It happened in small moments. The way he laughed at my terrible jokes, the way he brought me coffee without being asked, the way he stood up to leave whenever I looked tired, always putting my comfort before his own. It happened in big moments too. The night he flew me to Italy to see the Renaissance paintings I had only ever seen in books. The day he surprised me with a rescue dog, a scruffy terrier I named Bella, because he knew I had always wanted a pet and Viktor had refused. The time he held me through a panic attack, asking no questions, offering no judgment, simply being there until the storm passed. 1 year after my escape, I found myself standing on the balcony of the estate, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Damiano came to stand beside me. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything." "Nothing." I smiled. "How different my life is now. How grateful I am." "Grateful?" "For you. For this." I gestured at the estate, the gardens, the life I had built from the ashes of my old existence. A year ago, I couldn't imagine surviving another week. Now I can't imagine going back to who I was. He was quiet for a moment. "Who are you now?" I considered the question carefully. "Someone stronger than I ever thought possible," I said finally. "Someone who knows what she's worth. Someone who refuses to be broken, no matter what life throws at her." I turned to face him. "Someone who loves you." Damiano went very still. "Seraphina, I know you said I don't owe you anything. I know this isn't a transaction. But I need you to understand, what I feel for you isn't gratitude. It isn't dependency. It isn't Stockholm Syndrome or trauma bonding or any of the other things people might assume." I reached up and touched his face, tracing the hard lines of his jaw. "I love you, Damiano Corsetti. I love your patience and your protectiveness and your ridiculous sense of humor. I love the way you pretend to be terrifying when you're actually the gentlest man I've ever known. I love that you waited a year for someone you'd only seen crying in front of a painting." His eyes were dark and intense, filled with something I was only beginning to understand. "I love you," I said again. "And I wanted you to know." For a long moment, he didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Then he kissed me. It was soft at first, tentative, questioning, giving me every opportunity to pull away. But I didn't want to pull away. I wanted to dive deeper into this feeling, this connection, this impossible second chance at happiness. "I have loved you," he murmured against my lips, "since the moment I saw you. I have loved you through every moment of watching and waiting. I have loved you through your healing and your nightmares and your moments of doubt." He pulled back, cupping my face in his hands. "I was afraid to tell you. Afraid that it would feel like pressure, like expectation, like another demand on a woman who had already given too much to men who didn't deserve her. And now? Now I know that you are the strongest person I have ever met. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your love." We stood there in the golden light of sunset, wrapped in each other's arms, and I felt something I had forgotten was possible. Hope. Marguerite came to visit 3 months later. She had recovered from her accident, though she still walked with a cane. When she saw me, truly saw me, healthy and happy and whole, she burst into tears. "I thought I lost you," she sobbed, holding me tight. "I thought Viktor had won." "He didn't win," I said, hugging her back. "And he never will." I told her everything. About Damiano, about the rescue, about the life I was building. She listened with wide eyes, laughing and crying in equal measure. "So let me get this straight," she said when I finished. "You escaped an abusive husband with the help of a Mafia boss, and now you're living in his mansion and you're in love?" "That's an accurate summary, yes." "Sarah." She grabbed my hands. "This is the plot of a romance novel. You are literally living inside a romance novel." I laughed, really laughed, the kind of laughter I had forgotten was possible. "I know. Trust me, I'm aware of how ridiculous it sounds." "Ridiculous?" Marguerite shook her head. It sounds amazing. It sounds like exactly the kind of ending you deserve after everything you've been through. She was right. It was exactly the kind of ending I deserved. And it was just the beginning. 2 years after my escape, Damiano proposed. He did it on the anniversary of the night in the parking garage, in the exact spot where he had first stepped out of the shadows to save me. The garage had been torn down and rebuilt as a community garden, Damiano's idea, funded anonymously. I wanted to change the meaning of this place, he explained, kneeling among the flowers. I wanted to turn it from a place of pain into a place of growth. He opened a small velvet box. Seraphina. You have taught me that strength comes in many forms. That survival is an act of courage. That love can bloom even in the darkest places. The ring was beautiful, a simple diamond surrounded by tiny sapphires that matched my eyes. Will you marry me? I was crying again. But these tears were different from all the others I had shed. These tears were made of pure joy. Yes, I said. 1,000 times yes. We married in the garden of the estate, surrounded by the people who had become my family. My mother, healthy and whole, sat in the front row with tears streaming down her face. Marguerite served as my maid of honor, her cane decorated with flowers. Celestina Corsetti embraced me before the ceremony and whispered, "Welcome to the family, Cara." And Damiano waited at the altar, looking at me like I was the most precious thing in the world. Because to him, I was. Viktor Blackwell died in a mining accident 3 months after our wedding. I received the news with a strange kind of peace. Not satisfaction, exactly. Not triumph. Just closure. The monster was gone. The nightmare was over. And my new life had only just begun. If you've made it this far, I need to ask you something. This story, my story, took months to put together. Hours of writing, editing, and praying that it would reach someone who needs to hear it. If you're that person, if you're trapped in a situation like mine, if you're wondering whether escape is possible, if you're holding on to hope by a thread, please know this, it is possible. You are not alone. And there are people in this world who will fight for you, even when you don't have the strength to fight for yourself. Now, I have a request. If this story touched you, if it made you feel something, if it gave you hope, if it reminded you that there is goodness even in the darkness, please subscribe to this channel. Not for me, but for the next person who needs to hear that escape is possible. Share this story with someone who might need it. You never know whose life you might change. And remember, no matter how dark things seem, there is always a way out. There is always someone willing to help. There is always hope. This is Seraphina, signing off. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. And most importantly, thank you for believing in happy endings. Because I'm living proof that they're real.